When people think about Roblox, they picture something simple: blocky avatars, bright colors, obstacles, roleplay houses, a harmless game built for kids. And for millions of players, that's exactly what it is. But Roblox isn't just a game, it's a platform hosting tens of millions of daily users, a digital economy moving real money. It's a marketplace where virtual items sell for thousands of dollars, and a development engine where teenagers can earn life-changing payouts or nothing at all. And whenever something grows that large, it develops shadows. If you remember from Vol.II, we explored the visible disturbances of condo games, mass ban exploits, off-platform grooming, and the audio apocalypse. Issues that made headlines primarily on TikTok and YouTube, where many people still remember these incidents. But those were surface level topics, as in Vol.II, it isn't about what everyone already knows. It's about what operates quietly beneath it: the hidden exploit economy, the black market trading stolen accounts, the market manipulation behind rare items, the private servers that vet members off platform, the legal battles that never fully trended, and the ban waves that wiped out accounts worth thousands overnight. None of these things exist in Roblox marketing material, but they exist. Because Roblox isn't a children's platform, it's an ecosystem, and ecosystems create niches. And in a digital ecosystem, some niches are built around control, money, and loopholes. And the most unsettling part isn't that bad actors exist, they exist everywhere online. But rather, the most unsettling part is how organized some of them have become. Entire Discord servers dedicated to reverse engineering Roblox client, paid subscription models for cheat software, and groups that treat digital item trading like hedge funds. This isn't random chaos, it's strategically structured. And the deeper you go into this iceberg, the more it starts to feel less like a game and more like a parallel economy running alongside of it. An economy that sometimes targets the very players the platform was ever built for. So in Vol.II, we'll descend below to the obvious scandals and into something more quieter, less viral, but arguably more telling. This is Roblox's most disturbing iceberg, Vol.II. At the surface, Roblox presents itself as a place defined by creativity, a platform where anyone can build anything, where imagination is the only real limit. But like most systems built on openness, the same freedom created vulnerabilities that weren't discovered overnight, but slowly, quietly by people who weren't interested in creating games. They were interested in controlling them. And over time, these people built something that most players wouldn't really see. An underground economy, an invisible market, a parallel version of Roblox operating in the shadows, also known as the exploit economy. It usually begins with something small. A player joins a game and notices something strange. Someone flying when flying isn't even possible. Someone walking through walls. Someone instantly gaining infinite currency. At first, it feels like a glitch or an accident. But it isn't. It's intentional. Because behind that player isn't just skill. It's software. Programs known as executors. Tools designed specifically to inject code directly into the Roblox client, allowing the user to override the rules of the game itself. And once that line is crossed, Once someone realizes they can control the game instead of playing it, everything changes. These truths aren't distributed openly. They exist in private websites, Discord servers, and hidden forums. Names like SpanAX, KRNL, and Scriptware, softwares built not by Roblox, but by independent developers who understand the platform's internal structure well enough to manipulate it. And they aren't free. Some cost $20, others $50. Some require subscription, real money, in exchange for the ability to break the rules, which raises an uncomfortable reality. This wasn't just cheating, it was business. A functioning black market built entirely around exploiting Roblox. And the products being sold weren't just executors, they were scripts, thousands of them, pre-written code package designed to do specific things, give infinite health, reveal every single player through walls, automatically collect currency, even completely destroy game servers. Anyone could buy them, anyone could run them. No programming knowledge required, just copy and paste and execute, and suddenly the game belonged to you. Entire websites existed for this purpose. One of the most well-known was We Are Devs, a site that openly distributes executors and scripts to thousands of users. Another example was V3Million, a now infamous forum that functioned as a central hub of the Roblox exploited community for years. These weren't small communities. They had hundreds of thousands of members, dedicated sections for buying, selling, sharing, improving exploits. It wasn't chaos. It was organized, structured, professional. And the deeper you go, the more disturbing it becomes, because some exploit developers weren't just selling scripts. They were selling access, private exploits, undetectable exploits, premium tools designed specifically to avoid Roblox moderation. Because Roblox does ban exploiters, accounts get terminated every day, but exploit developers adapt. They build bypasses, encryption layers, all designed to survive as long as possible, turning exploitation into an arms race between developers and the platform itself. This is where the economy part becomes impossible to ignore, because some exploit developers made enormous amount of money, thousands of dollars, sometimes even more, selling tools designed entirely to break Roblox systems, tools that had no legitimate purpose within the platform, and yet they thrive, because the demand was endless, new players discovering exploit every day, new buyers entering the market. But the real damage wasn't just cheating, it was control. Because exploits gave users power over entire servers. They could crash games, corrupt data, ruin experiences for hundreds of players at once, and game developers, many of them young or independent, had no way to stop it. Their creations could be destroyed instantly by someone running a single script, months of work, erased in seconds. Roblox eventually responded. They improved their anti-cheat system, introduced Bifront, a security system specifically designed to prevent code injection. And when Bifront launched, something unusual happened. Major exploit programs stopped working overnight. Exploit forums filed with panic, and developers scrambled to find bypasses, because for the first time in years, Roblox had the advantage. But even that wasn't the end, because exploit communities didn't disappear overnight. They adapt, they relocate, rebuild. Some moved to private Discord servers, while others began developing new executors designed specifically to bypass Bifront. The economy didn't collapse, it evolved, and it became harder to see, harder to track. And that's the part most players never realize. The exploit economy isn't a glitch, it isn't an accident. It's a parallel system, a hidden marketplace operating alongside Roblox itself, with its own developers, its own customers, its own profits, and its only survival strategies. Because the moment a platform reaches millions of users, it stops being just a game. It becomes an ecosystem, An ecosystem attracts predators, people who don't want to play the game, but rather people who just want to control it, monetize it, and break it. And even today, despite moderation, despite bans, despite security updates, the exploit economy still exists, quieter than before, more hidden than before, but still there, waiting, adapting, surviving, just beneath the surface. At the center of Roblox is a promise that anyone can build a game, that anyone regardless of skill level can open Roblox Studio, drag free assets and create something alive. And for millions of developers, especially younger ones, the promise is real. They open the toolbox, search for what they need, a door, a weapon, a lighting system, an admin panel, and insert it into their game within seconds. It feels safe, official, supported, because these assets are coming directly from the Roblox own toolbox. But what most developers don't realize is that some of these assets aren't tools, they're traps. The infection doesn't look like malware. There's no warning, no pop-up, no indication anything is wrong. The model appears normal, it functions exactly as it's advertised. The door opens, the weapon fires, the system works. And because everything looks normal, the developer publishes their game. They invite players. They begin building something real, something they care about. But hidden inside these assets is something that developers never really see, a script buried deep within the model, often disguised as harmless names like main, core, or lightning handler. Scripts designed not to help the developer, but to give someone else control. These are known as backdoors, and once they exist inside a game, the attacker doesn't need permission anymore. They already have all the access they need. And this isn't even speculation because backdoor free models have been documented across Roblox for years now. You can find archived discussions warning developers about malicious assets hidden inside Roblox toolbox models. What makes these backdoors especially dangerous is how invisible they are. Many developers using free models are beginners, and they often don't check scripts, they don't read code, and they trust the asset because it's available publicly. And that trust becomes vulnerability, because once the game is live, the attacker can execute commands remotely. They can give themselves admin powers, spawn anything, control anything, even destroy the game entirely. There have been documented cases where attackers use black doors to silently monitor games for weeks, waiting, watching players' count increase, waiting for the right moment, and when the game reached its peak activity, they would strike, spawning inappropriate content, destroying maps, or worse, inserting scripts that could get the developer banned by association. Because Roblox moderation doesn't always distinguish the difference between developer and the backdoor. If malicious content appears in your game, your account can be held responsible, even if you didn't know it was there. And one of the most disturbing aspects of backdoor infections is how organized they have become. Attackers don't just upload one malicious model. They upload hundreds, sometimes even thousands, disguised as popular assets developers would likely search for. Admin systems, weapons, GUI systems, anything that developers frequently needed. And once those assets spread, the infection spread with them. Every developer who inserted the model unknowingly gave the attacker the key to their game. You can see proof of how hidden scripts operate inside Roblox Studios itself. You just need to open any model, expand the Explorer tab, and buried within the structure, you'll sometimes find scripts nested inside scripts, code inside code, invisible unless you know exactly where to look. And for most developers, well, they never look. This creates a very disturbing imbalance of power, because attackers don't need to hack Roblox directly. They can literally just hack the developers instead, using this tool inside of their games. They exploit trust, and they rely on inexperience. They turn on Roblox's greatest strength, accessibility, into the greatest vulnerability. There are archive examples on YouTube showing attackers activating backdoors live, spawning admin panels inside the games they didn't create. And once attackers had access, they could do more than just trolling. They could insert permanent malicious scripts designed to survive updates. Even if the developer removes the original model, the infections still remain, hidden elsewhere, waiting. Some attackers even monetize this access by selling backdoors access to infected games, advertising servers they control, and basically turning someone else's own creation into their own product, their territory, and their own profit. Roblox eventually began monitoring free models more aggressively by removing known malicious assets, introducing warnings, and encouraging its own developers to verify scripts before publishing games. But the problem will never fully disappear because anyone can still upload models, anyone can still hide scripts, and of course anyone can still create a backdoor. And even today, infected models still exist, just quietly sitting on the toolbox, waiting for the next developer who trusts it too easily, waiting for it to be inserted, and of course waiting for it to be activated. Because the scariest part isn't that attackers can break into games, it's that sometimes developers invite them in themselves, without them ever realizing it happening. As if this topic wasn't disturbing enough, this one is very similar to condo games, but not in a way you expect. There's no hidden server, no private links, and no obvious attempt to conceal what it is. Instead, it does the exact opposite. It exists completely out in the open, under a name so ridiculous and so unserious that most people wouldn't think twice about it. A game like Fart Button Testing Simulator doesn't sound like something worth analyzing. It sounds like a joke, and that's exactly why it works. When you first load into the game, like this on Roblox, nothing feels immediately wrong. You're placed into a bright, overstimulating environment filled with buttons, effects, and constant motion. The objective here is simple. Press a button, generate a result, earn points, and upgrade. It's the same loop seen across countless simulator games. Familiar enough to understand instantly, simple enough to keep going without thinking. But the more you spend time on it, the more something starts to feel off. Not in a way that would trigger immediate concern, but in a way that slowly builds the longer you stay. The entire experience is exaggerated, beyond what feels necessary. The sound effects are loud, repetitive, and constant. Animations are stretched just enough to demand attention every single time you interact. The screen fills with numbers, particles, and visual feedback until it becomes overwhelming. Games like this aren't designed around meaningful gameplay. They're designed around attention. Every element exists to keep your focus locked in. The button is always available. The award is always immediate. And the next upgrade is just within reach. There's no pauses, no quiet moment, no time to step back. That's where the comparison to condo games becomes clearer. Just like condos, this game operates within a gray area. Not because it's explicitly inappropriate, but because of how it's structured. It pushes themes as far as possible, while still remaining technically acceptable. The humor is exaggerated, repetitive, and central to the entire experience. It isn't just part of a game. It is the game. And that identity is what draws players in, especially younger ones. The design is simple enough to understand instantly, but simulating enough to hold attention for longer than expected. The repetition becomes automatic. You press the button, watch the effect, get the award, upgrade, and repeat. And over time, players stop questioning it. At first, it feels strange, then it feels funny, and eventually, it just feels normal. The normalization is where things start to become unsettling, because once something feels normal, people stop analyzing it. They stop asking why it exists, or what it's designed to do. They just accept it as another part of the platform, another simulator, another trend, another experience that blends into everything else. But when you step back and look at it from the outside, the structure becomes much clearer. This isn't a random game, it's a part of a larger pattern. A pattern where exaggerated humor is used as a tool to capture attention instantly. A pattern where the goal isn't necessary to create something meaningful, but something that keeps players from leaving. And when that formula works, it spreads, because on Roblox, engagement drives visibility. The longer players stay, the more successful the game becomes. And the more successful it becomes, the more visible it gets. And the more visible it gets, the more developers replicate it. So games like this don't remain isolated. They multiply. Variations appear, each one slightly different but built on the same core idea. And over time, once felt strange becomes expected. And once it becomes expected, it becomes normalized. And that's what makes this topic unsettling. Not because fart button testing simulator is the worst thing on Roblox, but because it represents how easily content can exist in that gray area. Content that doesn't clearly break rules, but still feels off when you really try to examine it. Because in the end, this isn't just about one game. It's about how systems like this are designed, how they spread, and how they become part of the platform without most people ever questioning them. Unlike condo games, which they hide in the shadows, this kind of content survives by doing the complete opposite. It says visible, accessible, and just normal enough that most people never stop questioning it at all. As we move into the final topic of this layer, things start to shift away from individual games into something much bigger, and arguably much more important. Because at this point, we're no longer just talking about weird simulator trends or shock humor disguising itself as gameplay. We're talking about the system that allows it all to exist in the first place. The moderation. The invisible structure that decides what stays in the platform and what gets removed. On paper, the moderation system inside Roblox is supposed to be one of the most advanced in the industry. Automated filters, AI detection, human reviews teams, reporting tools, escalation system, all designed to keep millions of daily players safe. And in official statements, Roblox consistently frames itself as a platform built around safety and protection, especially for young users. But when you start looking around how the system behaves in practice, a very different picture begins to form. Because the reality is, moderation on Roblox is not just about what gets removed. It's about what doesn't get removed, what gets missed, and sometimes even what gets incorrectly removed. And that inconsistency is where the paradox begins. Players regularly report experiences where harmless content gets flagged or punished, while other content that pushes boundaries seems to remain active for far longer than expected. In some cases, developers have documented situations where their games were removed with vague reasoning like spam or inappropriate content, without any clear explanation or transparency about what specifically triggered the action. At the same time, broader investigations and legal commentary have pointed out that moderation failures on platforms like Roblox are not an isolated incident. They are structural challenges tied to scale. When a platform has tens of millions of user-generated experience, automated systems inevitably become the first line of defense. And when those systems heavily rely on the pattern detection rather than context, errors become unavoidable. And that's where things start to feel a bit unstable, because moderation isn't just a background system. It literally directly shapes what kind of content survives and what kinds disappear. And when a system is inconsistent, unpredictable, or overly reliant on automation, it creates gaps that developers learn to navigate, gaps that content learns to slip through, and gaps that over time begin to define the platform itself. That's why topics like simulator games with sexual intent or condo games can thrive without ever clearly breaking the rules. They don't need to break the rules, they just need to stay just under them. And on the other side of the spectrum, there are also cases where moderation appears overly sensitive or inconsistent, reacting to harmless language or ambiguous content in ways that users don't always understand. This creates a perception problem, as players begin to feel like the system is unpredictable, sometimes strict, sometimes lenient, but rarely transparent. And when users can't predict enforcement, they start to stop trusting it. Because moderation isn't just about punishment, it's about guidance. It tells developers what is acceptable, what is risky, and where the boundaries are. Over time, that leads entire genres forming in these gray zones, not explicitly violating the rules, but clearly designed around maximizing engagement in ways that feel engineered. The fart simulator, the attention-grabbing mechanics, none of them exist in isolation. They exist because they work within the system that moderation has unintendedly shaped. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable part of this entire layer. Because moderation isn't just falling in one direction, it's falling in multiple directions at once. Over-removing in some cases, under-removing in others, and consistently adjusting in response to pressure, scale, and public scrutiny. Even internal discussions and community reports shows ongoing frustration with automatic enforcement systems flagging users incorrectly or inconsistently, especially as AI moderation becomes more prominent. And when you combine all of that together, you get a platform where the rules technically exist, but the experience of those rules are uneven, which creates a strange environment where developers don't just design games for players, they also design them for moderation. Because once content adopts to moderation, instead of moderation shaping content, the entire ecosystem starts to shift. And that brings this layer to its end, because everything we've covered so far, from simulator trends to borderline engagement design, all leads back to this same system. And that brings us to the end of layer 2. Because when you really think about everything what we just went through, none of this is isolated. The games, the moderation, the patterns, they're all connected. They all exist within the same ecosystem, and that ecosystem is constantly changing, constantly adapting, and constantly being shaped by the people inside of it. Platforms like Roblox aren't small, they're massive, millions of players, billions of interactions happening in every single day. In fact, Roblox processes billions of chat messages daily, and relies heavily on AI systems just to keep up with that scale. And at that level, nothing is ever going to be perfectly controlled. There are always going to be gaps, there's always going to be things that slip through, and sometimes those gaps become entire parts of the platform. That's what makes this iceberg so interesting, and honestly so unsettling, because it's not just about bad games or weird trends, it's about how the system works, how it behaves when they're pushed into their limits, how content evolves when it's driven by attention, and how moderation, even when it's in advance, can still struggle to keep up with the scale it's trying to manage. And the deeper we go into this iceberg, the less it becomes about Roblox itself, and the more it becomes about the internet as a whole. Because Roblox isn't unique in this. It's just a reflection of something bigger. And in layer 3, that reflection gets a lot darker. And from here, that's going to wrap up layer 2 of this iceberg. If you already made it this far, you already know things are only going to get deeper from here. So if you want to see the next layer, make sure to stick around. Drop a comment with anything you think I miss, because a lot of this stuff goes way deeper than we have covered. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and subscribe if you want more deep dives like this. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.